Welcome to Experiments in Leadership. I am Sonu Bhasin. Experiments in Leadership is a space where industry leaders share their thoughts and stories about various facets of leadership. As always, before anything else, I do want to urge you to subscribe to my channel. It has great conversations with some really interesting people and it is free to you. So go for it. Today, it is my great pleasure to have a young leader with me. Uday Sinha has spent almost his entire work life working in the beverages industry. From Pepsi to Suntory Pepsi to now Heineken, he has certainly moved across all colors of beverages. And he has also moved across many countries and regions as well, from India to the Middle East to Vietnam to now Singapore, where currently Uday is the Regional Managing Director for Heineken for the Asia Pacific region. And when you work in the beverage industry, how can you not have fun? Now, Uday has some killer moves on the dance floor, as much he has on the golf course. He's also a family man at heart, proud of his wife Neeti, who's a painter and an interior designer, and son Cheyenne, who's following his father's footsteps and is studying at University of Michigan, where he's studying engineering. Welcome to Experiments in Leadership, Uday.
Thank you, Sonu, for a lovely introduction. Pleasure to be here.
Great. Looking forward to the conversation. Uday, you started with Tata Motors, then moved on to Asian Paints, where you spent 6 years, and then on to Pepsi in India. Now, these are three very different products, three different customer segments, and even the kind of workforce that you had to deal with. So how did you adapt yourself as a leader across these three different industries?
So it's a very interesting question that you have asked me, Sonu. And people do ask me that, I did an engineering and how did I end up now in an industry completely and a job which is completely different from what I was supposed to do. And I actually say to people that I have actually gone from a high-tech industry like the automobile industry, where I started using my true engineering skills to the next level, which was the paint industry, which is a notch lower on engineering because it is what I call in Hindi the khichdi technology. You take some pigments, you take some, a nice solvent to basically dissolve the pigment into it, and then you have basically some additives, and then you turn it around in a big vessel and you make paint. So it's as simple as that. And then I go further down to make what in India is called sharbat. So you have sugar and water and Pepsi, and that was So I actually climbed down the ladder on my engineering skills. But what I have gone up the ladder is my management and my ability to run a company skills as I transition from one job to the other. And as you said, I've done multicultural, multi-country, multi-language assignments. But it's at the heart of it, if there is one company I have to thank for being what I am today, it is Asian Paints. My first job after business school from the campus was that company. I worked for 6 years, and it fast-tracked me into becoming a sales, a marketing, a supply chain and finance guy, a comfortable guy to run a unit, what they used to call the depot executive, the branch manager. Then I was the regional manager, and finally the marketing manager. When I left Asian Paints, I had no reason to leave Asian Paints in the classical sense of an Indian career. But I wanted to just see the global world, and I took a leap of faith from a team of 75 people reporting to me, running a completely new vertical as a challenge, which was called large user business, where basically our competitors were very strong, like Berger, Goodless. Asian was very strong in the retail side. We established a business which I'm told now, which is more than 5,000 crores. And I was the first one to start it from zero. We went to 75 crores on a target of 50 crores. So you can imagine the type of freedom that company gave us and the type of grounding. Then came the job with Pepsi. And in the beverage world, before I stepped in the beverage world, my grounding was in the snacks business of Frito-Lay. Now, Frito-Lay is also very, very, very detail-oriented, very much like Asian Paints. And hence, it was what is called a company which every dollar is a prisoner. But when I came to the Pepsi and the Coke world, it was all about big is beautiful. So the more noise you make, the better you get.
You are.
So it's a very different world from the world of the snacks business. So I
Yeah.
really got to experience the complete end-to-end of a PepsiCo organization.
Yeah.
And now when I jump ship to an alco-bev industry, which is beer
Hmm.
industry, very
Hmm.
much like the beverage industry, but a lot of fun and
Hmm.
this whole idea of connect. So we basically don't play in the high percentage alcohol at all.
Hmm.
All our industry is less than 5% alcohol. So it's more
Hmm.
about the connect side. I
Yeah.
know in India, it is still viewed as an industry where people uh, are a bit afraid to join, but trust me, the
Hmm.
amount of fun I've had in the last 2 years is actually worth it.
That we can talk offline. I don't think we want to talk online about it.
That,
But Uday, you said that your grounding happened in Asian Paints, and
mhm.
you learned a lot. Now, just taking off from there, so Asian Paints is a family-owned business, and then Pepsi is a true multinational, right? Now, as a leader, is there and also, family owned businesses typically are called Lala companies, and people look down upon them, and, nobody wants to join them. But having seen yourself as a leader, both in a family owned business run professionally and in a professional non family owned business, what are some of the pros and cons that a leader has in either kind of a business? And in your opinion, is one better than the other?
So let me start with the pros and cons. The
Yeah.
really obvious pros for a family-run business. I would not say Asian Paints is actually anymore a family-run business because
Family
the
owned. Family
own
owned.
yeah initial but basically they divested the control of running the day-to-day operations to a professional management very early, and
Right.
hence they are what they are. But
Right.
what is the biggest advantage of businesses which are again primarily controlled by the family is they have a much more longer term
Mm-hmm.
of making their big bets
Mm-hmm.
and waiting for the results to happen. And
Hmm.
that's why it is the success of Asian Paints, as we all know. It played
Hmm.
the long-term game. It went step by step, and it is where it is now.
Hmm.
In Pepsi's and Suntory's and Heineken of the world, I think in the international world, where you come into the play of multinationals, you
Hmm.
become more stock market oriented, and hence the street controls a lot of your decisions. And
Hmm.
I think the level of patience on staying the course is much
Hmm.
lower. And
Hmm.
hence, uh, then the flip side is that because it is so,
Hmm.
the ability to make big bets and bold bets is much higher in a
Hmm.
multinational,
Hmm.
while the typical Indian owned companies are a bit more conservative. And that is what I saw when I joined from
Hmm.
Asian Paints world to a PepsiCo's world.
Hmm.
I really realized the big thing of what size is and how size matters, how scale matters. And because of
Hmm.
scale, you're able to do a lot of stuff, which then
Hmm.
becomes an entry barrier for competition. So that
Hmm.
was the first big difference. The second big difference is about creating wealth for employees.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, in India, now I think things have really changed. So
Hmm.
it does not hold true
Hmm.
today. But when I was working in the 90s, and when
Hmm.
we decided to leave, yeah, we were having a great life. We had good job to do. We had a salary. We had a circle of friends. Everything was fine. But we
Hmm.
were not really creating wealth for ourselves. But the
Hmm.
multinationals from day one, the first, I still remember I joined them in January 2001 after
Hmm.
6 years with Asian Paints. And the
Hmm.
very first time I realized what a bonus is, what is
Hmm.
a shares which you get as a part of your long-term incentive. There's a
Right.
short-term incentive, long-term incentive, and then the salary. And then I
Right.
realized, oh my God,
Hmm.
if I add up my incentive part, it is actually more than what I earn as a salary. So that
Hmm.
I think was
Hmm.
the other big difference. Creating wealth for the employees is
Hmm.
what the multinationals did by
Hmm.
way of their comp and benefit
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
approach. So I think that's the other thing which was very, very different.
Yeah.
And the last thing I think was this ability to really invest in R&D, the research
Hmm.
and development part of a
Hmm.
business to create innovation as a
Hmm.
constant reason for
Hmm.
keeping your consumer attached to you and giving him
Hmm.
something new every time. And
Hmm.
obviously, the paint was a much more slow moving business. When I joined the beverage, it is just the reverse. It is fast, one of the
Faster.
fastest
Yeah.
FMCG
Yeah.
businesses. So
Yeah.
that innovation part is the other big thing.
Hmm.
So I think those are the big ones.
Yeah. No, so let me just focus on this wealth creation bit. And yes, it is true that there are companies that allow you to create wealth. There are companies that focus more on, say, salary and whatever else. Though in India things are changing, there is a huge opportunity to create wealth even for domestic companies and family-owned businesses. But to all those aspiring young leaders there, people who are just starting their careers or want to start a career, what is the right time to start focusing on creating wealth? I mean, should I join, if I'm just passing out of business school, should I focus on the wealth creation aspect of a business that is offering me a job, or should I aspect on some other stuff?
No,
So,
absolutely not. I would say the starting 10 years, one
yeah,
has to invest on themselves
yeah.
to basically learn the tricks of the trade. Now, whether you are getting into this whole industry, which is a fast moving consumer good, or it's an
Hmm.
IT, or it's a
Hmm.
services industry, does not matter. So
Hmm.
I would recommend every new aspirant for getting into a job to
Hmm.
really choose a company which can teach him or her
Hmm.
how to become efficient in understanding what
Hmm.
I call the P&L, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. I
Hmm.
always call P&L is all vanity,
Hmm.
balance sheet is what I call sanity, and cash flow is reality.
Is
If you
reality.
understand this in the
Uh,
business school as
uh,
a theory, you actually quite often ignore it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
this is what people have to learn. So
Hmm.
if you want to be a CEO, if you want to be a general manager,
Hmm.
then this is the heart of
Hmm.
running a good business. So the
Hmm.
first 5 to 10 years, I would say, learn
Hmm.
the ropes by doing different jobs. So you
Hmm.
join the sales function, do
Hmm.
good in sales, and you will learn the ropes and you will go up in the ladder
Hmm.
to whatever extent. Then you jump your share thing, go to
Hmm.
marketing function, run
Hmm.
the brands. Then you jump and do some supply chain work. Then you
Hmm.
also do some of finance work. What
Hmm.
effectively happens is in those 10 years, you will ground yourself to
Hmm.
learn all aspects of the business so
Hmm.
that nobody can fool you when you are on the top and people are
Right.
reporting to you. That's
Right.
where it really counts. So I would say the wealth creation part automatically happens. So what I'm saying is, if you don't need to run after it, but
Hmm.
that age is typically 45 to 55 when you will
Hmm.
really make your so called
Hmm.
money, which you
Hmm.
wanted when you were a 22-year, 23-year-old joining the industry. So
Yeah.
that gap between what really happens good for you and
Hmm.
what is actually that 20 years thing.
Yeah.
So the first 20 years is all about the 10 years you learn, and all the next 10 years you move around. So, like,
Yeah.
I left India, went to various countries, and
Hmm.
just gain critical experiences. I always say that
Hmm.
career is a spider web, never a ladder. If you start climbing a ladder, you will definitely trip and fall. But if
Hmm.
you spider web your way and
Hmm.
go for it, like I started with the paint industry. So I did cross cut, then a snacks industry, then a beverage industry, which is a
Hmm.
non-alcoholic beverage. Then
Hmm.
now currently with an alcoholic beverage. So it's industries are industries. It is all critical experiences. I
Hmm.
started from a company where I was running a vertical as a startup. Then I
Hmm.
came to a company which was huge, and I
Hmm.
was a cog in the wheel, and I got my first job in Taiwan as a GM.
Hmm.
I think in hindsight, I only got the job because nobody else wanted it. It was too small. It was too small. It was
Yeah.
just 25. In a world, I told you, in Pepsi, which is a $60 billion company at that point of time,
Right.
who
Right.
wanted a $25 million assignment? So, but the
Hmm.
fact is that you learn a lot. Also, that I said, while I moved out of India in 6 years, I continued to do my critical experience. So, the
Hmm.
next 10 years is all
Hmm.
about gaining experiences in
Hmm.
different geographies of the world. So, that would be my other advice to people in
For
India.
people.
It's
Yeah.
not that being in India, outside India is good or bad, but
Hmm.
try to do within India or outside India as much as possible
Yeah.
different types of assignments.
Yeah, and have patience. Don't chase money right from the start. I mean, you said that it automatically happens, wealth automatically happens. I read somewhere else that if you focus on your job or if you focus on your work, money is a byproduct. But if you focus only on the money, work also doesn't happen. So I know that
Absolutely correct.
a lot of the youngsters and the youngsters of today are really dazzled by the money and all the other stuff, but I think it is important to do a reality check and focus on developing your own capabilities and focus only on that for the first 10 to 15 years. After that, I mean, no matter who I speak to, no matter where around I look at my peers, if you have done your first 15 years of ragda, wealth is a byproduct,
It
really.
will come
So
automatic. I completely agree
it
with you.
does, unless you go something wrong, or if there's luck and whatever. But on that bell curve, 80% it happens. It
I
happens.
tell you, our first job was 10,000 rupees a month.
Oh,
Now,
that's
who
like
would
four
have
times
imagined?
more than me. My
Imagine,
first job was 2,500 rupees a month.
imagine. So, who would have thought that if you dial forward, now, obviously,
Yeah,
I've done 29 years of work ex. In 29, 30 years of work ex,
yeah,
obviously, the number has multiplied to a
yeah,
factor which I had not thought. If
yeah,
you had told me
yeah,
30 years later, Uday, what should be your dream salary? I
yeah.
would have given you a wild number, and now the number is bigger than the wild number.
Bigger than the
So, I
white.
think that's why I'm saying wealth happens on its own. Don't
Yeah,
chase it, it will
yeah.
happen on its own.
Yeah, no, these are very, very wise words, and I do wish that people, kind of usko gaant bandh ke rakh le, that do not chase money. Money is a
Money, correct.
product. Yeah. And also, when I remember all my friends who were boys, they used to talk in the university that if you chase a girl, it's sure that it's not, she's not going to respond. If you don't chase a girl,
She might come to.
chances are. So money is also goddess Lakshmi, don't chase her.
I
She
wish I had met
comes.
you before. Then I made the first mistake. I think I should have met you before. These words of wisdom did not come to me.
Words of wisdom. Absolutely. So, this conversation is really about experiments in leadership and experiments in leadership that have worked for you, or an experiment that has not worked for you. So, do you want to start with an experiment in leadership that has worked for you?
Yeah, so the way I look at leadership, and again, it's also benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
But what has really worked for me was you have to be comfortable with ambiguity and not have the fear of unknown. That is my most defining part of being a leader, because
Mhm.
I remember when I got my first assignment as a head of a depot, a small
Hmm.
branch in Asian Paints was called, it was a place called Raipur. Now
Right.
imagine when all your batchmates are staying in Chamris in Kolaba, working with the banks, and we are having this liveried servant serving us our food and drinks, etc. And I'm going to a place called Raipur with there's not a
Hmm.
single batchmate of mine who's in that part of the world. But
Hmm.
it was just the assignment of an independent unit head
Hmm.
running it was a 7 crore business with
Hmm.
4 salesmen and 4 staff to support. So a team of 8 to 10 people. But
Hmm.
that's the first lesson of leadership. You
Hmm.
are 22, 20, and then you go to a place and you have
Hmm.
people at 45, 50 years old reporting to you. So
Yeah.
what it teaches you is humility. How can you make humility your strength? So
Hmm.
instead of becoming a boss, which you are by default of the
Hmm.
position, you
Hmm.
start telling to everybody that you want to learn. You want to
Hmm.
learn sales, and you go with the sales guy. You want to learn accounting, so you do some bank balancing and cash balancing books
Hmm.
yourself for a unit, and then you want to do, basically ensuring people that while I'm put in this chair, I'm here to learn from you.
Yeah.
And that bonding, believe it or not, even today. So in course, as life would have it, I got married in Bhilai. And Bhilai
Hmm.
is just 40 kilometers away from Raipur. So even today, when I land in Raipur, I have to go to my in-laws' house.
Uh,
I have a lunch with those guys, the first guys who taught me
right.
what business is. So that's
Right.
a lesson in leadership, that what you
Yeah.
are taught by
Hmm.
people whom you command is
Hmm.
actually much more than any business school will teach you. So that is my first lesson of leadership, is
Hmm.
be humble, be hungry,
Hmm.
learn as much as you can. And you are by default, I'm
Hmm.
sure all of us have got enough, education and knowledge
Hmm.
to connect the dots and come
Hmm.
out with your way of solving a problem. So this,
Yeah.
this is, I think, the first thing I would say one should follow. The second is,
Hmm.
it is at the end of the day authenticity,
Hmm.
integrity, and love. What I call hate. H is about honesty, A is
Hmm.
about authenticity, I
Hmm.
is integrity, and L is love. Wherever you go in the leadership role,
Hmm.
you have to be honest enough
Hmm.
to tell people that you are what you are, right? And your
Hmm.
style of working should come across
Hmm.
without any facade. So people
Hmm.
should not see through you that I am trying to be someone just to win votes or win accolades. But
Yeah.
that's not. what is going to
Hmm.
drive the business. And
Hmm.
obviously, integrity is given it's not a 99% and a 1%. It's a 0-1 game.
It's zero
Either
one.
you,
Yeah.
it's either you are there or you're not there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
finally, people see intent. So
Hmm.
if your intent is visible to people and your
Hmm.
style is, even if you are a bit rough around your edges, and even if you're a
Hmm.
bit somebody who is a
Hmm.
bit arrogant, so to say, sometimes,
Hmm.
it does not matter, because to
Hmm.
get things done, you
Hmm.
need a team to work with you, and the team should have a very clear direction and a clear
Hmm.
and a clear leader who
Hmm.
can be courageous enough and bold
Hmm.
enough to lead them in a way. And
Hmm.
that is the second big thing I would say I learned in my life, because I
Hmm.
went from there to Kanpur. So in Kanpur, there was a paint dealers association which had gone for a strike. And
Hmm.
this is where you start learning your stakeholder management. I
Hmm.
first thing Asian Paint teaches is go and meet the district commissioner or the SP of
Hmm.
police, because
Hmm.
in our type of business you travel all over the place. Who knows what happens, and you're too young to
Yeah.
handle crisis on your own.
Yeah.
And I handled that whole thing in a very different manner because of my
Hmm. Hmm.
stakeholder management. I was
Hmm.
able to overcome the problem. I went to
Hmm.
Pune. There was a Mathari strike, which is the labor
Hmm.
union which comes and unloads and loads your trucks, and they wanted. So you start overcoming these things because you have in
Hmm.
you that ability to say, okay, we will
Yeah.
get things done now, and the team will come together.
So that is the experiment that you're saying, that learning from others and being humble, that is something that has worked for you when you see yourself as a leader, right?
Correct.
Now, what is something that hasn't worked for you? An experiment that
So
hasn't worked for you?
and that was, thank God it came early in life and I realized it. So
Hmm.
when I stepped out of India and I came into the world of PepsiCo,
Hmm.
we started in our own minds trying to do a lot of things which we thought, oh, this is the way it should be done because that's how we have done it in India. But
Hmm.
what we don't realize is everybody has a pride of place, everybody has a pride of performance. So I
Hmm.
went to this place in Taiwan when I got my first GM role. The
Hmm.
first 6 months, I just couldn't get anything moving because I
Hmm.
was trying to impose on themselves things I thought I knew very well.
Hmm.
Now, while I was humble, I was not trying to be arrogant. But
Hmm.
the point is, I was trying to say, oh, this is so obvious. Why
Huh.
can't they get it? Right? And that is so, and this whole
Hmm.
thing of assuming that everybody understood everything which had to be done and
Hmm.
not doing a check on them, that what I call the reinforce and then check whether they have got what you wanted to say.
Hmm.
And that is where people got completely disconnected because they
Hmm.
felt I
Hmm.
was not listening to them at all. Sometimes to get your work done, the biggest
Hmm.
lesson I learned was first listen. The
Listen.
first 30 days, first 60 days, just zip it. And
Hmm.
once you listen to people, the
Hmm.
feeling of getting heard is
Hmm.
half the problem solved.
Hmm.
Because if they don't get heard and you come with a solution,
Yeah.
they feel this is completely mismatched, no?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
the end of the day, they might follow exactly what you wanted to do, but that's the trick of the whole trade. So that
Hmm.
is something which never worked for me initially,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
then became my way of
Hmm.
converting it into a strength.
Hmm.
And that's the first 100 days. Typically, just go into all aspects of the business, but don't make an opinion, even if you have a strong urge to
Yeah.
do something, because everybody wants to prove
Yeah.
themselves fast and run
Yeah.
fast, etc., etc. So that
Yeah.
was a thing which never worked for me, and that I learned very early.
That, yeah. So, like you said, that you moved to Taiwan, and that's where you got your first lesson on how to manage different people in different cultures. But then you moved across different regions. And
Yes.
I assume that every region would have different ways of working. So, which country, which region would have been the easiest for you to manage outside of India, and which has been the most difficult?
I think the most easy to manage for me was Vietnam. My last assignment before I moved to Singapore,
Yeah.
when I was running the business as a CEO for Suntory and Pepsi joint venture. And
And was that
then
because you had learned by then how to
yeah,
manage?
it was very late. Yeah, it was easy because I was obviously 45 years old when I went for the job. So I was obviously a bit more seasoned and a bit more wise. And hence it was but to be fair, the
Hmm.
situation was very difficult
Hmm.
because when I entered the market, we entered into what is called a strong headwind of an economic slowdown. The things were
Hmm.
not working out well. We were actually losing market share. So it was a perfect storm. But the
Hmm.
beauty of Vietnam is that it's a country which I feel is very much like India.
Acha. How
It's
so?
99% education, so that's a different thing because India is a much low. But if you look at the people, their hunger in the stomach, the
Hmm.
willingness to go the extra mile,
Hmm.
get things done, the ability to that learning agility,
Hmm.
wanting to learn something new,
Hmm.
then obviously when they want to learn something new, they look at people with what I call thought leadership. So
Hmm.
this is a country where if you can prove your thought leadership, they will
Hmm.
eat out of your hands because they want to learn from a boss. So you
Hmm.
cannot be a boss by a position. And that is
Hmm.
very true for actually, I'm sure even in India, but definitely in the Southeast Asia and the
Hmm.
rest of Asia,
Hmm.
people are looking for what can I learn from him? What can
Learn.
I learn from her?
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
cannot learn something from your boss, then
Hmm.
immediately that respect, the amount of that buy-in
Hmm.
goes down.
Hmm.
And hence, I would say the Taiwan, for example, taught me this. And Taiwan was also very easy to work after that because
Hmm.
after that it was a team which wanted to succeed together. And once you have that
Hmm.
common vision,
Hmm.
common goal, and
Hmm.
success begets success. It's a
Hmm.
virtuous cycle, right? And
Hmm.
hence, I have then virtually enjoyed every other country. So I would not say I was in Dubai.
Any-
Du-
Yeah.
Dubai was basically a very different assignment. It was a joint
Hmm.
venture, stakeholder
Hmm.
management of Unilever,
Hmm.
PepsiCo, 25 countries to travel. So that was a difficult thing to manage because then I had to work with a bottling environment of a PepsiCo
Hmm.
where I was not selling PepsiCo portfolio. I was selling a Unilever portfolio to a PepsiCo bottler. Now
Oh,
that
wow.
is not easy because
Hmm.
then everybody says, see,
Hmm.
the name on the shirt is Pepsi, right? And if 99% of your business is built on Pepsi, that does not do well. And 1% of
Yeah.
Lipton iced tea, that was
Yeah.
the brand I was trying to sell,
Yeah.
is not going to be anybody's
Hmm.
concern area.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
to get a seat on the table of a
Hmm.
bottler, which
Hmm.
who has his whole portfolio with PepsiCo, and then a new thing comes in as Lipton iced tea, that I thought was a very difficult thing. But we
Hmm.
overcame it by again the thought leadership of you make more money in a bottle of Lipton iced tea than you make in 5 bottles of Pepsi. So
Oh.
how do you convert that into a
Hmm.
advantage? It is
Hmm.
obviously very low on volume, but very high on
Hmm.
profit. And
Hmm.
then you start talking the story of how you can change your mix to
Hmm.
make your business more profitable. And
Hmm.
that gives you a seat on the table. So
Yeah.
that would be my learning as well.
That, yeah. I'm actually quite tempted to ask you a question that normally a woman gets asked, which is a woman obviously almost every time gets asked, how do you manage both home and work? And, you have worked across different regions. You have worked across as, leaders of large teams and large businesses. So how do you manage to keep your family in focus? And in general, how can male corporate leaders bring about a sort of balance between family and work?
I have a slightly different theory on this one. And I'm telling you, it should also, from a woman's point of view, also, it will hold same. Even if
Tell me,
I
tell
was
me.
a woman, I would have answered you exactly
Answer
the
the
same.
same way.
And my answer is that before I take care of the family, I start first by taking care of myself. So
Hmm,
I start with what I call my me time. So
hmm,
from all my years, you can ask my wife and my son, I go to bed very early. My drop dead time is 10:30. But
hmm,
then I wake up every day at 5:36. But
hmm,
then I hit, and then there's 2 hours of my, I can go for a brisk
hmm,
walk, I can go for a jog, I can go for a run, whatever I do, I spend time in the gym. But
hmm,
that 2 hours from a 5:30 to a 7:30 is
hmm,
what I call my me time.
hmm,
And that is extremely important for you to energize yourself for the
hmm,
rest of the day. And once that becomes a habit, you will realize that then you will actually pace yourself in a manner that
hmm,
honestly, I have never felt work life balance as an issue in my last 30 years of working.
hmm,
Why? Because I have always treated work as fun. And
hmm,
when I'm on holiday, when I am, let's say, after dinner doing something and something comes up for an answer, I don't think it's a problem to answer a mail or answer something because today the world is so digitized. Your
hmm,
mobile phone is your computer now. So people say,
hmm.
oh, then I'm a victim of my computer. I keep looking at the emails. No, you don't look at your emails. You
Hmm.
look at your mails if you want to look at your emails.
If you want.
Otherwise, why do you want to look at your
Hmm,
emails?
hmm,
And hence, I sometimes feel that moments like working late or
hmm,
working is very few and far between. I would work, let's say, 12 in the night, 1 in the night someday, because
hmm,
there is something so critical to be done,
hmm,
probably
hmm,
twice or thrice a year. Now, if I make that as my story, that, oh, because of that, I'm having no work-life balance, and obviously people will feel differently. So my way of taking care is first, me time. Second, weekends, completely block out yourself from your work, which is the biggest problem in India. So I went back to India. When we met in India, I had gone back to India for 3 years, 2008, 9, and 10. Remember, Sonu?
Yeah.
And that is the time when we really had some great fun, great party together. But imagine on a Saturday, your bosses had no what is called feeling of huh?
No qualm of calling you
No
up.
qualms on calling you at 9 in the night on a Saturday and discussing business. And that is what I thought kills the motivation to people to work in the weekday. Because in India, I think people stretch themselves to stay late in the office. I don't know, I'm sure things have changed a lot now, but I used to insist that people come in time and go in time, rather than, stretching yourself and all. And weekends give to your family. So I have been traveling at least 3 weeks out of my 4 weeks, almost all of these 29 years. But on a weekend, I'm always home. So when it was Dubai, it was a Friday, Saturday holiday. I used to come back on a Thursday night. Now in Singapore, I come back on a Friday night. So wherever I leave, wherever I go, I try to not travel on a Sunday. I try to travel at best late Sunday night or Monday, and I'm definitely back by Friday. So see, then my family also has no so-called issue of missing me, because during the weekdays, even they are actually busy. Whether it's my son in a school or my wife with her interior design business, everybody is busy from a Monday to a Thursday, Monday to a Friday, right? So that's the other part of balancing life. The second is spend quality time with the family. So when you are there in the house, then is a time that you have to consciously create moments. Like we are three of us. So we create moments to go out. We'll definitely have a few meal, one meal or if not two outside over the weekend. We'll definitely, in India, we used to watch films. In Vietnam, there was no watching films, but we used to go out to, a friend's house, and we used to have a lot of gatherings with people and all, just to have what is called a time when people just mix and get to know each other. And my golf is a passion, but my wife is also quite supportive, because I get up in the morning at 5:30, even on a weekend, to play my golf from 6 to 10, 6 to 11, and I'm back home by lunch. So by the time they are getting ready for the day by 12, 11, 11:30, 12, I'm back home. So then the weekend starts. So, this whole balancing piece is, so I'm sure if a woman would do that, something from her side would be very similar, that you have to balance your time.
Yeah. No, but my takeaway from hearing you is that even as a boss, I think it is the boss's responsibility, the leader's responsibility to make sure that people get their time over the weekend so that they are more committed to work during the week. And also don't force them to stay back late, because, sometimes it becomes almost like an ego issue that how can somebody go home, before me because I'm the boss. So
correct. That feeling is completely wrong. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm sure after hearing you speak, there'll be many, many people who are going to apply to you to be part of your team so that they can also work along in this.
But one advice I would give, I'm an Indian at heart. I'm Indian by, from top to bottom, and the blood inside is completely Indian. But one advice I want to give to all Indian managers and Indian leaders is differentiate work from your personal life. You cannot start discussing work even in a party, even when you meet friends, even if you end up talking work 50% even time of the 100% which you have with your time outside, then that's the problem. That is where it all starts. It is not that you're working later on, but you have defined your success with your talk of work, being in work and everything. So the work has entered into the personal life. And I think that's the problem. For example, the moment I enter home in the evening, I don't talk work at all.
Yeah.
My wife, I don't think even knows what I do. And
what you do? That almost sounds like you're with the CIA or the FBI, or your family really doesn't know what you do.
But I know a family where the wife knows exactly what's happening in the husband's office. They know every gossip. Come on. Why on earth will I waste my time to tell her about when I want my time with her? Tell her about what is happening in my office.
Yeah, great. So, Uday, actually, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. We all really loved the conversation. And viewers, keep watching this space. We will continue to have more interesting conversations. Until then, bye.